My name is Phil Richardson, and I'm the creator of this site, September2015.com. And you'll notice from the banner it says September of 2015 will begin 6 years of tribulation. The 6 years of tribulation starts September 2015 on Yom Teruah. So that's what this site is all about, is to warn people what is about to transpire on planet Earth in this year. You can see the countdown. I have a countdown timer. Right now it's 180 days until Yom Teruah. And this base, to back up here, I'm a Hebrew roots Christian. So once I got into the faith about 3 years ago, understanding the depth of the Hebrew roots movement and how what's known as the Jewish feast days are really relevant, not just for the Jews, but also for Christians as well. We've all often heard from pastors and others that, those are done away with, or those are for the Jews. Well, actually, that's not true. It has everything to do with Yeshua coming back again. When I use the name Yeshua, it is Jesus's Hebraic name. Jesus, when you go to blueletterbible.com, that's a resource a lot of pastors and people use. If you put in Jesus, it'll go to the root word in Greek, which is Jesus, but that's actually not the root word. The root word is Yeshua, which is found 295 times in the Old Testament, and of course in the New Testament it's much higher, like 900 times. So it's in there, and his name is so deep in the Hebrew that I just choose to use that as being part of Hebrew roots Christians, embracing the truth behind his name, and also the Father's name as well. So where was I? So let me show you the current time. I don't know if I've already done this or not. Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. Just to kind of give you an accurate time frame of when this is. I like to document my videos with the current time and date. And off to the right, you'll see some of my recent posts. I'm going to click on 6 years of tribulation will begin in September 2015. I created that back in January the 7th, and just decided to do a video on it, but it'll be wise to throw it on YouTube. And so this really goes into deep. This has to do with my 6 years of tribulation PDF, which I'm going to click on and kind of go over that real quick, and why I believe Yom Teruah of this year will begin the final 6 years. And it's not 7 years. Last year on Yom Teruah, I thought it was the 7 years of tribulation. It was not, for obvious reasons. It has not happened. But one thing that happened last year is that the Antichrist was revealed on Rosh Hashanah, which is the same as Yom Teruah of 2014, actually the eve of it. And so while we're at it, let's just click on the 6 years of tribulation. Here it is. I'll start at the very top here. And it's hard to get the whole thing in here, but if you just kind of read it, it'll say, there we go. September of 2015 begins the 6 years of tribulation and the 7th millennium. Well, actually the seventh millennium actually begins March the 21st. It should. We're from the 20th to the 22nd, actually. There's a 3-day window there. But that's spiritual year, not civil year. In the Hebraic calendar, what I call the Creator's calendar, there's spiritual year and there's a civil year. Spiritual year happens on Nisan 1, and then civil year begins on Tishri 1, and that's also known as Rosh Hashanah. It's the head of the year. Actually, biblically speaking, the head of the year should be the month of Nisan, or the month of Abib, depending on how you pronounce the month. And that falls on Nisan 1. Of course, Nisan 14 is Passover, and that's the day that Yeshua died for mankind, and was in the grave on unleavened bread, and arose was the first fruits of resurrection on first fruits 3 days later, exactly 72 hours later. So I go into a little bit of that. I think I have an article on that, on how he was actually in the grave literally 3 full days, 72 hours, and not I go into why him dying on a Friday and resurrect on a Sunday is just a fallacy. It's not true. Plus, there's no 3 nights. It's not, 3 days, and the best you can do is 2 nights. So it just doesn't add up. Why do I believe it? Well, this is very complex, especially if it's your first time seeing this PDF. And it took me really, I would say 3 weeks to really nail this down really good. And, I do updates every once in a while on it. I just want to put you in a perspective where we are right now. We're actually in a Shmita year right now. Shmita is once 1 year out of 7 years. And we're actually in a Shmita right now. You go on YouTube videos and check out get information on the Shmita years. You have rabbis acknowledging that we're in a Shmita year. But this is, the way I figured this out was I based it on the patterns from the Creator. So we have a 49th year, and we're kind of right in the middle right here. Coming up to the beginning of the 7th millennium, which is, according to my calculations, about 2 to 3 days from now. I'm just going to read this to you. It says, Nisan 1 of 2015, 3/20/2015 begins the spiritual year of the 7th millennium. So the reason I got off on that tangent, because I mislabeled this 6 years of tribulation, and the 7th millennium begins a little earlier. It begins right at this solar eclipse. So you can see right here, it falls on Nisan 1. Okay. And then, of course, 14 days later, you have Passover. You have that blood moon. We're in a blood moon tetrad right now, the 2014-2015 blood moon. And this is also the way I figured this out, the tribulation, the whole timeline, is that June 7th, 1967 was such a critical key date. It's a recapturing of Jerusalem. And when you take 49 years, a Jubilee, just let me back up, a Jubilee is a full 50 years. But the start of a Jubilee is the first day after a 49 years. And this can be verified in Leviticus chapter 25. You can read, I recommend that you read the entire chapter. But it goes into when a Jubilee is celebrated. And that happens on Yom Kippur or a Day of Atonement. So from June 7th, 1967, 49 years times 360 days equals 17,640 days. When you go to timeanddate.com, take that date, add it to this, it'll come to September the 23rd, 2015. Okay, that's the eve of Yom Kippur, and of course the next day would be Jubilee. It's when you would celebrate the Jubilee. So this is what I believe is Daniel's 7 weeks. This will be the final 7 weeks, or prophetically, 7 weeks is 49 years. Okay, this is a double prophetic fulfillment. It was fulfilled once back in, I think 438 BCE or somewhere right around there, when the decree was given by Darius to go rebuild the temple, and that took 49 years to build. And then you had the 62 sevens, was the time until Messiah came on the earth, Yeshua. And then, so this is why I call this a double prophetic fulfillment, because it's happening again. It happened again with the recapturing of Jerusalem under Jewish control for the first time in over 2,000 years. Very significant. And of course, that comes when 17,640 days, one Jubilee right here, and the Jubilee ends at the end of the 50th. Here's the lunar. And you'll see that that's going to end Yom Kippur 2016. That will be the end of the 50th. And then we have a year, and then we have another 50th, but this is based on, that's the solar right there. Okay, so there's a lot going on. I mean, I could go on literally for hours and hours trying to describe this. And I have documented this pretty well on my website. So this video is really meant to get you to research, come to the website, because there's so much going on here that it's very difficult to just explain one time and why it's 6 years and not 7 years. Let me just briefly go over that right now. I had insight into this event, to a certain event happening 4 weeks before Yom Teruah of 2014. Okay, so that's when I created the site, September2015.com. And what it ended up happening is I made a video, and again, I made a video on the 22nd, 2 days before the 24th, so you can verify that going to the video and upload it to YouTube. What ended up happening is the Antichrist did confirm a covenant with the many. Here it is right here. This event happened on September the 24th, 2014. It resulted in the passage, excuse me, of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2178. And this resolution was approved by 15 nations. Well, 15 nations. It was a resolution that was approved by all 15 unanimously. And if you go and watch the video, you can watch this video right here, and you can pretty much guess who the Antichrist is based on, the timeline. But the date 7/24/2014 is highly significant. If I'm going to scoot down here real quick, and you'll see this right here. There's two confirmations. It deals with two times, two start dates. One is September 24th, 2014, and one is June 7th, 1967. Again, June 7th, 1967 was the date that Jerusalem was recaptured and put in the dominion of the Jewish people for the first time, again, in over 2,000 years. If you follow the math is very simple. It takes that 49 years plus 2,550 days, which I'll get into, is 1290 plus 1260, equals 19,830. You add that to timeanddate.com, June 7, 1967, plus 19,830, results in September 21st, 2021, which is the eve of Tabernacles 2021. Independent date, September 24th, 2014, when he confirmed a covenant with 15 nations, again, that resulted in the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2178 being passed. You had 2,550 days. It takes you to September 17, 2021, the eve of Yom Kippur 2021. So I got a question mark up here. What are the odds? The sixth feast of Yom Kippur 2021 highlights the seventh feast of Tabernacles 2021. And so let's go up here and just review that real quick. And the reason where I get the 2,550 days is the addition of 1260 plus 1290. That can be found in the 12th chapter of Daniel. This was a revelation after going to this gentleman's site, endtimepilgrim.org, which he did an elaborate job describing how in a 7-year period, let me move this over here a little bit. My voice is giving out on me here. Okay, so let's real quick, over a 7-year period, okay, of time, starting on Tishri 1, which is Yom Teruah plus 7 Hebraic years. Certain years will finish on Tishri 10, which is Yom Kippur, okay? And there's a time frame of Tishri, basically 2014 to 2021 works, and then also 2017 to 2024. The other years in blues don't line up simply because it's the difference between 87 moons and 86 moons. So when you have 86 moons in a 7-year period of time, you'll start on Tishri 1, which it always does, and it'll end on Tishri 10 if you add 2,550 days. Okay, so that goes into a little bit on that. Let's back up here a little bit. So I thought last year, the tribulation would start. It did not start. So the only other conclusion is that it would be 6 years of tribulation. And of course, that started with the Antichrist confirming a covenant with the many. That was the starting date. Exactly 360 days will commence with Yom Teruah again this year. It will happen more likely on 9/14/2015, September, which is a Monday. I think actually it might be the Monday. I think 15th might be a Monday, but we know that stock market crashes, historically, the biggest ones happen on Mondays. So 6 years of tribulation, September 2015. Let me back up. One of the foundations of this whole chart, which I'll just go briefly into, has to do with what's known as the 3-pillar foundation, 2015. This is a fact. These events, when I put a big old fact, I want you to it's kind of like, hey, this has happened, or there's some kind of pattern here. And it has to do with of course, the feast days of Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Tabernacles. So the eve of Yom Teruah it has to do with the Shmita, and more specifically, the Shmita release day. The Shmita release day is a 1 day out of 2,520 days, or a 7-year period of time. On the Shmita year, it's the last day of the civil calendar of the Shmita year. That's why it's the eve of Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah, again, is the beginning of the, is more or less the same day as Rosh Hashanah. It's the head of the year, according to the Jewish culture. Biblically speaking, the head of the year is the month of Abib, month of Nisan, which is right around March, April. And you can verify that. I read some articles on that. Okay, so Elul 29, 2015, the last day of the civil calendar is to be projected will be the next major economic crash of the stock market. The past two have happened on 2001, Elul 29, 2001, Elul 29, 2008, and it will happen in the future, Elul 29, 2015. And what happened in those past two is you had a huge stock market crashes. Actually, they're documented. They fell 7%. It fell 7% over a $700 billion failed economic stimulus package, or I forget all the details, but a lot of sevens. Whenever you see judgment, it seems to be a sevens in there, and that's what the whole idea of the Shmita is, based on Leviticus chapter 25. The Shmita is Hebrew word just meaning release or let go or let fall, and it's a way that the Creator judges. So basically, it was meant to be a blessing, in that the Creator Yahweh Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh would increase your product, or your crops and your land and your cattle, if you obeyed His commandments and you obeyed His statutes and did what He said. But if you didn't, if you rebelled, then that Shemitah would be a judgment, and that's what we're in. We're in a judgment right now. This is why I call it the 49th judgment Shemitah on my site. And so, anyway, that's that. It's what I call the world economic crash. That'll be the eve, I believe, the eve of Yom Teruah 2015. Well, the next thing is the eve of Yom Kippur. So what happened, or what will happen on that date, is really interesting. So what I found out is, when I started doing the calculations, doing the research, is June 7th, 1967 was the day that Jerusalem was recaptured. And again, it kind of fell in the middle of the summer. It didn't mean a whole lot. It wasn't close to any feast days. So, on its own, it didn't, there's nothing that would say, hey, this date was extraordinary, which it is. This is an extraordinary date. And so I'll explain this a little bit. I think I have, let me just do it one more time here. If we go up here once again, we'll see that I believe, again, that June 7, 1967 was the beginning of Daniel's 7 weeks, or 49 years. This is based on Daniel chapter 9, I believe, verses 24 to 27, I believe. And, again, 49 years times 360, 17,640 days. I'll go timeanddate.com, you put that in. It'll take you to September 23rd, 2015, which is the eve of Yom Kippur 2015. Okay, what's unique about this is you have these tetrad moons, what's known today as the tetrad blood moons, and the tetrad blood moons fall on the feast days. And so there's only been 3 the past 100 years. First one was 1948, 49, or 49, 50. And then, you have this period of time, and then you had another set happening in 1967, 1968. The same thing, Passover Tabernacles, Passover Tabernacles. So what you notice here is that June 7, 1967 fell right in the middle of the two tetrads, the beginning, the two. When I say tetrad, it means 4. It's kind of like the Latin or Greek name for that. And of course, we're in the midst of a tetrad right now, 2014 to 2015. You have Passover Tabernacles, Passover Tabernacles. We're right here. If I can put my little pointer here, we're 3 days away from the solar eclipse. I'm going to read this. Nisan 1, 2015, which is March the 20th, 2015, begins the spiritual year of the 7th millennium. So a lot of the stuff I get comes from TorahCalendar.com. This is a fantastic site. It's given me a lot of insight of the time we're living in right now. And I believe, the TorahCalendar.com, they put the year right now is the year 6000, which is the seventh millennium. But I believe they're a year off because it doesn't line up with the Shmita. In other words, they said that 6000 fell right here on Yom Teruah 2014, but they're off 1 year. That's the Shmita. It's the beginning of the Jubilee that's when creation would have been, or the creator would have created, creation would have been on a Jubilee. We're in that 49th Shmita right now, about ready to start the Jubilee on September the 24th, Day of Atonement. So, okay, so let me get back to this June 7, 1967. So you see, again, a Jubilee is 50 years. If you take 50 years right here, you minus 360 days, which brings you to September the 14th, 2015. That is the full 40, well, actually, it's not exactly the full 49 years. The full 49 years would come to, again, September the 23rd, 2015. There's a 10-day window between Yom Teruah to Yom Kippur. So anyway, that is highly significant. So the eve of Yom Kippur has to do with a Jubilee, the beginning of a Jubilee period of time. I'm going to throw up a couple articles which really ties into September 23rd and 24th. And the first one here it talks about Pope Francis to address Congress during historical blood moon tetrads, September 23rd on the Day of Atonement. Well, September 23rd is the one day prior to the Day of Atonement. It's the 24th. But what's really interesting is the Pope, this Jesuit Pope, the first Jesuit Pope to ever come in front of the Congress. Actually, it's the first Pope ever to come in front of the Congress and speak about whatever topic he's going to speak. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is absolutely prophetic. What's going to happen with that? And I'm going to throw you another article. Here it is. Says this article addressing the first Jesuit Pope on the 24th and identifies him as the Revelation 13 beast power. So Revelations chapter 13, beast power is one of the two. There's beast number one. There's the first beast, and then there's the second beast. Well, I've done a lot of research on this, and I had revelation back in 2005 that the Vatican was actually the second beast, in that the first beast was actually the U.S., the United States of America. And I've written an article on that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Well, maybe I don't know if I should or not, but it was on another website. But I agree with him. I agree that the first beast, the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, and this is not condemning if you're Catholic. This just has to be the power structure that's set up in the Vatican and Rome. And so what I find interesting is that the first beast is visiting the second beast. This is prophetically why Revelation was written, Daniel was written, so we'd have insight into these last days. Anyway, that's happening. That's very historic. And so if you want to get more information, you can go to my website. I have a written up article how the Pope ties into St. Malachi prophecies, and you get more information. That site goes over the St. Malachi prophecies and how the Pope ties into the seventh king and the eighth king of Revelation chapter 17. Actually, it fits perfectly. So you can read about that at popepetrus.com. But back to this. Let's see here. What else can I go over real quick? Again, there's a lot here. You'd have to go to my site, september2015.com, to get more insight on that. But again, the important part here is that prophecy was fulfilled. The Antichrist confirms covenant with the many. Again, that happened on September 24th, 2014. Resulted in the passage of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2178, which is really against 15 nations, which really is an anti-terrorist resolution against ISIS or ISIL. And you'll notice that it's not really, excuse me, not having impact on ISIS or ISIL, all the bombing activity that the nations are going against and bombing raids in Iraq, Syria, mostly those two countries. And it's just interesting how you have this confederate of nations bombing other nations, all in the quote unquote to protect us from terrorism. So, I believe that this resolution will be used against Israel someday in the very near future when ISIS invades Israel. A great way to bomb Israel. I mean, when ISIS gets in there, to start bombing away, try to get ISIS, and you know. Anyway, that's my insight on that. I believe you'll see that take place in the next 6 years. So that's kind of it. I mean, again, there's so much going on here. There's so much information why I believe the 6 years of tribulation begins now. And I've kind of hit on some good stuff here, but there's so much more in this. And of course, this all lines up with what I believe is the return of Yeshua / Jesus. Go up a little bit. Here we go. Rules as king. That's when he comes back, I believe, 2021. And his return begins the seventh millennium, the seventh year, millennial year, right here. Seventh year of the tribulation. He'll begin the seventh. It'll come back at the beginning of the seventh year of tribulation, seventh month of Tishri. The seventh day is in the seventh day of Daniel, seventh feast day of Tabernacles, and also you'll notice that the Shmita begins here as well. So there's a lot of order. I mean, the Creator he has divine order, and this is why, this is not just coincidence. This is divine order. So if I were the Creator and I had my Son die for mankind at the appointed times, appointed feast days, that's actually Daniel chapter 1:11. Sun and moon were created 4 times, and it says seasons. Actually, appointed. The word is moed, appointed feasts or appointed times. It's actually the root word is feast. It's like feast days. So that has to do with, of course, where we're in right now. This has everything to do with the feast days. This is why we have Yom Kippur Tabernacles and Yom Teruah, because these prophecies will be filled on those future days, and starting with this up and coming Yom Teruah 2015. Well, I know I've missed a lot, but you can get a lot of information on my website. You're going to September2015.com. Thanks a lot. Bye.